We're on Charlie King, Brandon Hanley, Fatherhood for the rest of us, and Charlie King is with
Heroic Fatherhood.
right on, brother. Charlie and I have we've collaborated a few times now, I think. And this
Absolutely.
I think we're going in the direction of several times, right? What is several? To me, it's always like 5 or more. So
Right.
we are we have had conversations in person and actually reached out and touched somebody. We saw each other at Dad 2.0.
Dad 2.0.
And
Hashtag send the
we
love.
we really just Charlie's a hell of a guy. And I enjoyed our conversations, and since then we have kept in touch, and we have had back and forth conversations. Charlie's always doing some awesome things, and I guess I am too. And we just kind of bounce ideas off each other. One of the ideas that Charlie came up with was like, hey, let's get together and talk some more about fatherhood and see whose lives we can't touch. I think it was something along those lines. That's what I'm using. So Charlie, if you guys aren't familiar with Heroic Fatherhood, Charlie, go ahead and give them the lowdown on that for us.
Ooh, cool. Well, I'll give you the quick nugget. Heroic Fatherhood is all about shifting the narrative. It's all about shifting the narrative that runs our life, right? Like, it's really easy as a guy in this world to feel like the burden of the world, especially if you're a dad, is on you all the time. Whether it's commitments from work, requests, needs of your wife and family, your social commitments, your volunteer commitments. And we just really, like, the big goal over at Heroic Fatherhood is creating content and helping guys shift the narrative about their lives so they can live lives that are fulfilling, that they're living in a way that, inspires them and inspires their kids. And, like, when you look back, that the stories your kids are going to tell about who you were as a dad is something you can be proud of. Right.
Absolutely.
So that's what we do. That's what we're all about at Heroic Fatherhood.
Oh man, you got to love that, right? You got to love that. And Charlie, the best part about it is, I mean, you mean it all. It's not like this is just top of mind, right? It's not like, hey,
this isn't just something that just showed up.
Right. Like you've been now, how long you've been a coach for so you are a fatherhood coach too. Let's put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
And your brand is Heroic Fatherhood. You have been in the coaching realm for 7+ years, correct? Around
Yes,
that. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I have indeed.
Nailed it. And before that, before even the coaching, you were, and maybe still, I think you would consider yourself still an entrepreneur, right? Like, I mean, continuous on a serial entrepreneur, somebody who likes the pain but also enjoys the thrill of it.
Absolutely. I was a serial entrepreneur for going on 8 years before I got into coaching. Okay. And then I got on the coaching track, and lo and behold, here I am.
Right. And I think one of the things that I took away from when we got together at Dad 2.0 was like, I mean, you're very poor at having conversations in passing. which is a roundabout way of saying, like, you have in-depth meaningful conversations with people. And I think that even at some point you said, Brandon, I just don't do these general conversations. If we're going to talk, let's make it mean something. And I love that, man. I mean, and you grabbed me and you had that deep conversation, and it's still having an impact. And I just want other people to know that, I mean, that's the impact of we talk about offering, as coaches, we talk about offering the consultation call, the power call, the this or that or the other call, whatever you want to call it.
The strategy call.
Yeah. The reach in, rip out your throat call, whatever. It's that it has that kind of impact though. That's the even if you decide to never move forward after having that conversation with a coach, I dare say that coach, if they're worth their salt, and I'm adding myself in this, is able to help you have a powerful transition or a powerful something happen within that moment, within that hour call, 2 hour call. I mean, it doesn't really matter because you're having that call for the benefit of the person on the other end. It's not necessarily the benefit of the coach. It's like, listen, let's get together, have this conversation because you need to see what it feels like to go through it. And it's really, to me, something that can only be experienced. Could you?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? Like, here's the thing is like when we give ourselves permission and when we give ourselves permission to drop the small talk and drop the bullshit and really have authentic conversations, pretty much anything is available. Right. Like when you're willing to like get real in a conversation and like, it's not, when I do calls with people, they're pretty short. And the goal is like getting really clear, when somebody says, well, I don't know if I'm, like I might think your work is great. Like the first thing I ask permission is, do I have permission to be direct with you? Do I have permission to actually, ask you things or speak what I hear or, and be direct. It's not common that we find that in conversation. And to the same extent, what I share with people is the more transparent or the more authentic you're willing to be about where you're at in your world, right, the more impact that this conversation can have, whether it's a client or it's a conversation we're having. I had this summer, my project of the summer, because I'm somebody who just has to move their body all the time. I really, whether it's hiking or running or working out at the gym, this summer I needed to chop wood. I decided it was chop wood. I had a dump truck of logs delivered to my house. It was like 50 logs. And I live in the Northwest. These are not small logs. These are like, smallest one was like this big around. And the guy came and he's like this salt of the earth guy. He's like, yeah, I'm clearing lots up in Port Angeles. And I got a truckload of logs and yeah, I'll deliver them down here for an extra $50. I'll deliver them down there. Guy comes down. It's like this, I don't know what size it is, but it's a massive dump. Consider like it's a 10-yard truck. Right. Comes down, backs this thing up, dumps them off. He and I are chatting up like you do. And we start chatting and, and we're talking about family. Why? Because we're guys of a certain age. And he's like, yeah, I've got kids. And he started talking about how he wasn't connected to his kids. And he started talking about the fact that he doesn't speak to his daughter and his daughter doesn't speak to him. And that he's all alone. He's divorced, he's all alone, and his kids don't speak to him. Right. And there was this rift. There was this moment where a rift was created between he and his daughter about some really core belief stuff. And he just let me have it. Wow. He just gave it up. Right? Like in that moment when you're having a conversation with somebody and he just was super authentic and really let me see, that moment where it's like, yeah, my wife, I haven't talked to my daughter in like 8 years. Wow. And, and like, I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, that's gotta be super hard. I'm so sorry. Right. And we just talked. Right. We just talked. And like what should have taken 15 minutes, right, an hour and a half later, he had to turn his truck off. His truck is now turned off.
It's out of gas.
And we're just talking, right?
Sure.
And like, but in the moment, like he had never said that. Right. He never said some of the stuff he said to me in that moment. Like, and it was just like the willingness to open the door. And we have guys say this stuff to us when we're in that one-on-one. Yeah. Where we're like, I'm like, how you doing? And, you get this sometimes and a guy will look around and be like, my wife and I are really fighting right now. Right. And like we get that. And like, any guy is going to say, I'm so sorry. Right. Like, I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah. And my invitation for guys who want to lean in and get like really connected to other guys is like, like what's going on? Or, is there something I can do to help? Or, that's gotta be really hard. And, that's like, I'm so sorry. Like, is there anything I can do? Right. Right. And then be quiet and wait and wait, because there's more. There's so much more right there. Right. And if we wait and we wait long enough, they're going to say something else. And when they do, that's the opening to just be there, right? Like, 'cause they don't need our advice. Fuck.
Son
Sorry,
of a,
Faith.
come on, man.
Dude,
Oh, now we got to start over.
over
This
again.
is
And we're
live.
banned from
Hey,
Facebook. And
real
we'll never
quick,
be on the
real
internet
quick.
again.
Don't lose that train. I actually got something I want to say into that. So before I go on, if everybody's still on, we got Brock tuning in. Brock's first words out of his mouth were "Happy birthday, Charlie." Tony Lee, always great to see you. What is going on? Dave Gieselman, thanks for showing up.
Oh,
Joseph McDonald, what's up,
was that
brother?
the
Eric, if
Daily
you're still
Diesel?
on, appreciate it. The Daily Diesel, man. Tony Lee, she's got this comment. I don't even realize when I'm full of shit in a conversation. I love it when people call me out on that. I'm on the edge there. I don't know necessarily if I love it, but I'm like, somebody be like, hey, you're full of shit. I'm like, you got me. Do you do you have Brock Lush says, Luce, do you have permission to speak into their lives? Yes, you would hope. You two both have that permission with me. Always appreciate you, Brock. Jamie, Wes, Williams, my neighbor. What's up, brother? Hope you're hanging out and catching a little bit of this. Tony Lee to the conversation piece of the the salt of the earth guy talking about not talking to his daughter for 8 years says, ouch. Are you tagged? Are you do you have this up on your thing too? And Gerald Pimpleton, as always, thanks for showing up, brother. It's good to see you. Is tuned in. Here's something, Charlie, that I struggle with.
Yeah, shoot.
When somebody's in a bad place and I want to move from a place of what can I do for you? Is there something I can do for you to this is what I know I can do for you, right? I feel like I should know of something to do, right? I feel like there's just like, and I think that that's what you did for this guy, right? You offered him a space, right? You heard his thing. You're like, you got 5 minutes. You want to talk about it. Offer that space, right? Let's have a cup of coffee. Let's do, something innocuous. Let's just guys pull off to the side and be like, let's take a breather, right? Moving from, because I feel like a lot of times when somebody's in a disarray or in a place of dishevelment or just like in a bad space, being directed for a minute can really be beneficial, right? Be like, hey, dude, why don't you stop what you're doing? Come over here, have that conversation, right? I think that that's really beneficial, and that's something that I think that I want to, for me, act on, right? And what's your take on that though too? Because I mean, if somebody asks me, hey, what can I do? It's terrible. Sometimes and sometimes, I don't think that I've let go 100% of my old jerky ways. I'm like, figure something out. If you don't offer something unless you got something to offer, right?
Yeah.
Type of thing. I want to be able to preempt that. What can I do? What do you find is helpful in your situation?
What I find more than anything is that human beings,
Mm-hmm.
they know what they need,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I'm stuck, right? Okay. Like I'm stuck, I'm fighting with my wife. I'm stuck. And I don't know what to do.
Right.
Oh yeah. Right. I might ask them like, well, if you did know,
yeah, I love that one.
what would that
for
be?
Sure.
Right. Like,
sure,
or,
yes.
Some, even the simple stuff is like, have you guys talked about it?
Right.
Have you talked about the fact that you're fighting all the time?
Yeah.
It's like, cause people know, right? Like we're inherently full of wisdom when we look, because sure. I know me better than anybody else.
That's
and
the beauty of coaching, right? That's the beauty of coaching though too, right there. I'm gonna throw that out there, right? Like you do know yourself better than anybody else. The coach is really there to help you get to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I know me, but I don't know what goes on inside somebody else. But what I do know is I can ask questions and see if we can find out what's going on. Right. Like, is like, so, you've got this thing that's not working in your life, fighting or it's not working out, finances, relationship, health and well-being, whatever that thing is. Right. And it's like, so, what's the missing? What's the gap? Right? Like what's not happening between where you are right now and getting you to where you want to go.
Sure.
And very often people are like, going to the gym, having that difficult conversation with my wife, sitting down and actually telling her that I'm scared we're going to get divorced, or sitting down and telling her that I don't know what to do. And I feel like I'm screwing up our relationship every time I come home and she seems very unhappy with me.
Right. Well, I think a lot of times too that you open up like that after not doing it ever, And you find out that a lot of this stuff is just stuff you're making up in your head.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times you're like, hey, this is what I feel like you're seeing or feel like you're feeling. And then as soon as like you talk about it, it kind of goes away. Not necessarily goes away, but like it really opens up. Like I said, having that conversation, say, I think you're feeling that. I feel like you feel like this way, or I'm feeling this way. Just like you said, I feel like I'm screwing everything up. And then, you hope on the other end of that is like, no, I'm just having a shitty day at work. I'm having a bad time at work.
Yeah.
Or, anything along those lines. But a lot of times, while, you may be on the other end of that it may be you, but a lot of times it's not. Right. I mean, a lot of times you're not the source of the agita on the other end, but you don't know that until you start having that conversation, until you open up.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So what we're really having a conversation about, right, is the willingness to be both sort of authentic, real, straight, whatever that conversation is. Right.
Right.
And the willingness to be willing to be uncomfortable. Right. Like be willing to be uncomfortable and go do that thing that we know there is to do that we don't want to.
Sure.
Right. So it's two parts, right? One is being willing to be authentic about what's going on. What's really going on is this.
Right.
And what's really not happening is that I'm too super freaked out to go do X. And, like owning that, when we get to own that for ourselves,
right,
anything's possible. Anything's possible. Like, you're like, oh yeah, like I'm just afraid to have this conversation. Great. Have the conversation. Right. Or I'm afraid to go do this, or I'm afraid to go and ask my boss for a raise. I'm afraid to go and say, I want to take on that big project. And this time I want to be project lead. Or I'm afraid to say, I want to host a conference of my own. Or I'm afraid to say, I'm afraid to write down that in 10 years, I want to own my own airplane.
No, I'm afraid that's huge, right? Like a lot of people are afraid just to simply write down their dreams, you know what I mean? Or visions or goals. I love because all those words are interchangeable, right? So, hold on a second. So Dave, I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. That's the response. And Tony Lee says, I like to ask, what are you pretending not to know? If you're not familiar, Tony Lee's a great person to kind of reach out to, maybe connect with in the coaching realm. Dave Gieselman says, oh shit, Meg McMuffin's in the house. That's my wife. Hey Meg, what's up? And Tony Lee, those conversations are so difficult, so worth it. I think they get easier with time, right? I think that once you kind of open, it's just like plugging up the holes in the dam, right? You can only plug up so many, and then eventually it's just going to kind of all come out. The thing is that we want, I would say, is control of that. Right? Let's control, when we let it out. Let's take ownership of that. Like you were saying earlier, like take ownership of how you're feeling and share it and lean into it. And a lot of times, again, you find that you didn't catch on fire. You find that you didn't incinerate. And a lot of times you also find in this kind of space that it's not all about you. And I know it's tough to take that, it's not all about you, but oftentimes like it wasn't you. It was, again, something else. Or maybe it was you. And then you also had the opportunity to say, all right, well, let's work on that. I come home, sit in front of a TV and drink 6-pack every day, and I don't help around the house. That's going to have some bearing on how the rest of the house goes, right? Like there may be some resentment that happens because I'm not helping out as much as I could. Right. So opens up those conversations. This went absolutely no way the way it was supposed to when we started this. Let's also
it went the way it needed to go. How about that?
That's right. We actually had a couple of Charlie had a couple topics. Charlie, tell us also what you have. Charlie's going to be launching XYZ because it's so secret. I don't know about it. Tell us what you're
So thanks for the intro, Brandon.
You got it, man. I'm all like No foreplay. Let's just do it.
So coming in September, I'm launching a program, a 6-week program that's called The Dad's Edge. It's finding focus and clarity in a world full of distraction. It's a 6-week program for dads who really want to start getting more traction in their life and feel like they're getting more ownership over their mindset, their actions, and their experience of life. It's coming up soon. If you want to get on the list for it, we were talking at one point about we were going to talk about dads and fitness in this interview.
Yes. Yep. There's still time for that. There's room for that.
There's room for that still. Yeah. So if you want to get on the list for it, go check out. You can either put a comment in here saying I want to be on the list, or if you want to be just automatically added to the list, we've just put together this awesome post that includes a workbook for health and fitness that's avoiding the fitness fads and all the pitfalls that come along from getting in shape. It's up on the Heroic Fatherhood website, and you can look at it over at the link that I just put in the comments down below. And if you get the workbook, it puts you on the list for finding out about the 6-week program that's coming up. It's going to be awesome. I'm so looking forward to it.
What are some things that we can expect out of joining up with the 6-week?
Life-changing.
Life-changing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right? Like we really get a chance to not only get our eyeballs on, right? Like not only to scout and get our eyeballs on those things that run us, right? Those conversations, those things that get in the way, those things that run us, those things that inspire us. But we also get to like get a lasso around those things that get in the way so that we can recognize them when they come up. And we can start to not let them manage us, but we get to manage them. We make this distinction between the you and that thing that wants to drive you on the inside and takes you off of where you say you want to be in the world, like who you want to be for your family, who you want to be for yourself, who you want to be for your community, what kind of legacy you want to leave behind, right? Yeah. And we all have that thing like, I can't stay focused. I'm super distracted. I don't know what's going on over here. Like what happened to the last week or whatever the thing went. But it includes everything about like, we're not just talking like the thing that excites me the most is that it is not this ethereal conversation that's way up in the air. We are going to really do nuts and bolts about what it takes to distinguish your code of honor. Like, and everybody's going to write a code, their personal code of honor that we've designed. So you're going to get this code of honor that you'll be able to get your hand around. We're going to be creating credos and things by which you can stand. So these are all things that if you get really drunk and stupid, you can get tattoos of. Yes, awesome. Absolutely. That's all I'm hearing. That's all you're saying. And I just want to make sure that the Heroic Fatherhood logo is right here, pal. That's awesome. I want premium. I want premium real estate. Do you have a credo handy? I want to hear a credo. Give me a sec. I'll look up mine. Yeah. So that sounds awesome, Charlie. Sounds awesome. I know that you've been hard at work on it for most of the year. I think we were talking about it way back in like April, which doesn't seem that long now that I say it out loud, but I mean, that's a long time, and you got a lot of cycles. This is what you do on the daily. So that's a lot of time vested in it. And I think that, as entrepreneurs and people who are, solo acts, when they're in it, that's a lot of that is a long time. Cause I'm positive you probably got like a gajillion hours in that. I don't even know how many zeros that is, but that's a lot. It's a lot. I got years. Yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, and I'm super excited about it. And the what's available on the backside is so much just falls away. That stuff that's that white noise that's just a little too loud, that seems constantly a little too loud. Like, I could do a little white noise in the background, a car passing by or murmuring in the background. But that white noise that turns up in our life, and it's that worries or that thoughts or should I's or is this a good idea? I'm not really sure. And that sort of that niggling doubt or the niggling questioning, right. Like so much of that falls away when you can really get super clear about who you are in the world and where you want to go. Yeah. And that's the thing that really makes the big deal. For sure. You got your credo? Having a hard time finding it right now. All right. Well,
No worries. No worries. Credo's on the list of things to talk about. So one of the things that Charlie had written down today for something to talk about is about like why commitments and obligations are the source of freedom and not the thief of it. And I think that ties into exactly what you're saying here, right? Once we get the clarity, once we make the decision, once we choose an obligation, right? Once we and a commitment, then all the rest of the stuff, the white noise and the distractions kind of fade away. Is that what you're at? Is that what you're saying?
Well, well, yes. It's simple boilerplate. Yes. Cool. Let's move on. New topic. No. So here's the thing is commitments and obligations are not binding. They're actually freeing.
Okay.
The distinction is that most people don't make intentional choices. Right? They don't, they make decisions like, this is probably a good idea for me. I should take this job because it's good for the corporate ladder.
Sure.
As opposed to choosing the job, which is, yeah, it'd be good for the corporate ladder, but boy, do I hate that idea of having a job like that.
Right. Sure.
So people make decisions as opposed to choosing.
Okay.
And when they make choices, there's the choosing, and then like, they often treat it like this is an obligation. And now that I've chosen, I must do this. There's that.
Right.
But there's great. Now you've done that. What if it wasn't an obligation, but what if you empowered the choice? What if you empowered the choice and you said, oh yeah, I've committed to driving my son to and from water polo practice every night that he has practice 3 nights a week, and he comes home after my bedtime. Right. So my wife was like, I'm not a nighttime person. I'm totally flaked out. I want to be in bed by 9 o'clock. Can you just be willing to be the guy who does the water polo and like water polo? And I'm like, okay, I can do it, but empower the choice. So like choose from a place of, choose and then empower the choice that you're making, saying, great. So I could either treat this like it is this dearth of a thing that I like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to go do that.
Right.
Or you can like make it a complete win. How could you make it a complete win? Well, you could, I'll catch up on my shows while my son's at practice. I'll use Wi-Fi at the pool. I could write a blog post every time my son's at class or in the pool. I could go to the gym at 8 o'clock at night because he's there for 2 hours. I can go work out for 2 hours.
For sure.
I could go for a walk. I could call an old friend. I could like call one friend a night. Like there are 1,000 different ways that when we make our choices, we can empower them. Right. And they become so much more when we are willing to like shift the way that we see our obligations. And like, I made a choice. This is now the obligation I have is how can I empower that? Right. Or if there's a gap, right? Like, oh, I made a choice and there's something about it that doesn't work, right? Sure. It doesn't feel good or it sucks or this is really broken. Like, what's the gap, right? And distinguish, oh, here's the gap. How do I fix that gap? Sure. How do I address that gap? Because then it gives you an action to take. Sure. Right? Because we can either sit with complaint, right, which is some sort of a suffering, really. Yeah, let's be clear. We go, yeah, you know how people are, you know how politics is, you know how women are, you know how kids are, you know how other guys are, right?
Who wants to sit in that?
Right. Well, most people do all the time.
That's a shame.
Most people are just fine suffering with circumstances just the way they are. Right. And they're welcome to it. It's perfectly fine. That's the way most people do what they do. This isn't that conversation, right? Like this is a conversation for people who are like, no, I'm actually interested in breaking through and living an empowered life where I feel like I'm behind the driver's wheel, where I'm deciding where we go. I decide when we shift gears and so get this, like life's a school bus, right? Yes. Life's a school bus and there are only 2 seats on the school bus. Right. You step onto a school bus, there's 30 rows and they all seat 3 people in a row. And then there's the driver's seat. Well, guess what? There are only 2 seats on that entire bus and it doesn't really matter. You're either in the driver's seat or you're in any other seat, and any other seat doesn't matter because you're not driving the bus. Right. And most people live in the seat where they're not driving the bus. And for most people, that's just fine.
Right there. Have you ever read that?
I have not.
It's worth it. It's worth it. It's a very good book. You also talk about like, making the choices too, versus decisions. And I think that it's a discernment, right? There's when we're in that situation, we make that choice to, like you talk about, like if I go take Finn to jujitsu, I love taking him there. I want him to be there. I don't feel like I'm obligated to do it or any of that jazz. But at the same time, I don't watch every one of his, practices 100%. Like sometimes I'll do some updates on videos. I'll catch up with the emails. I'll, schedule this, I'll do that, but I make use of that time. So like I'm there, I'm participating, I catch them up, I give them the high fives, and I catch them, I look for the good moments, and just so that I can say, hey, I saw you were working on, your Uma Pilata, and you did a really good job with it. Uma Pilata tonight, you're really tight. You moved well, right? That type of thing. So I'm engaged to the sense that I catch him doing things, but I'm also doing the things that I should be doing. And not that I sit around with all these books all the time, but I kind of do.
Right.
But this is another really good book, and it talks a little bit towards what you have to say. A lot of people talk work-life balance, right? And I think that what you're talking about is a little bit more the work-life integration, right? How many things can you do, in the book, and he's actually got a website too, where like you take the circles and you line them up, and the more circles you can get to overlap, the kind of the gist of it is the more you've got an aligned life. Like let's say that I can do a little bit of work while having fun with the family, having fun with the community, and all the stuff. So it's like jujitsu. I go to jujitsu, and I've got my work, I've got my family, and I've got my community, and all three of those things in one place. Right. So how much work-life integration can we have? And then also, again, like you're saying, is making that choice to say, I can look at all this misery that I'm doing. This looks shitty. Or it looks like something else because I'm making the best use of my time. Right. The whole lemons to lemonade, yada, yada, all the cliches, man, just so everybody knows they're all true. And that's the annoying part, is like when they become true, you're like, wow, make lemonade out of lemons, and that's just what you do with them. That's just what you do, though. But that's a choice, like you're saying, and you're saying though too, empower yourself to do that, and the choice that you make, or get behind it, right? You're saying, hey, look, this is a choice I made, and here's everything that's great about the choice I made. And it doesn't have to be great for anybody else but you, really. I mean, let's just be honest about that too. I mean, yes, you're doing the things because they are things that are good to do, and you feel good about doing them, but there's certain aspects of that if you kind of go along with it all, this could be the greatest day of your life. If you allow it to be, this could be the greatest day of your life. How are you allowing this to be the best day of your life?
Yeah. Right. And if it isn't, what is it that needs to shift?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For sure.
We talk, it's really easy in today's hustle society, and today, especially with men, like we want to optimize our time, man. How can I get two things done at the same time? How can I multitask? How can I work-life balance? And while I was sharing that there were things that you could do that double it down to make it a win,
right?
The other side of that coin is being present in whatever you're doing, right?
Sure.
Like being 100% there wherever there is.
Sure.
Right. Like if you've if you're there for a kid's practice or whatever, and the goal is to be there for the practice and you're not there for something else, is like, can you be 100% there? Right. Can you leave your phone in the car? Hashtag phone in the glove compartment. Right.
My phone just overheated.
Right. Can you leave your phone in the car, in the glove compartment, shut, and you go inside and spend nothing but an hour and a half just being present for your sons, daughters, children's, wives, practice, recital, event, meeting, whatever that thing is.
Sure.
And the suffering, and I so see this in my own life too, right? Like the suffering is when we think it's supposed to be some way other than it is.
Sure.
Right? Like, I can't believe I have to be here for X.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were just there for X, like if you could like just be there for X, right? Like there's X is just whatever it is. If it's meeting, practice, recital thing, it's just what it is.
Right.
The suffering is optional, but we suffer when we think it should be some other way than what it actually is.
For sure. We think that something else should be happening. Tony Lee says, I love that. It's like choosing to versus feeling like I have to do something. Choosing feels much more empowering. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And it even shifts when you speak it out loud, right? And I railed against this for the longest time, where it's like, it's like I'm choosing to, and I was prompted by a coach was like, yeah, I'd like to hear you say that, like, okay, but like I'm actually choosing to do X, right? I'm choosing to do Y because it like the way we speak about it,
Right.
the way we say it out loud shifts it. It's like when we have all those thoughts in our head and they seem unstoppable and they seem weird and you know what's going on and it seems like this big mystery and you feel stuck and you're, I don't know what's going on. And then you call your friend like Brandon and you go, look, dude, I'm totally stuck. I don't know what's going on. I need to chat about this with you. And you say whatever there is to say out loud. How often have you done that? And in the speaking of it out loud, it becomes super clear that you already know what the answer is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's also the power of questions and saying it out loud. Both things, right? So if I come and ask you the question, like, so what's going on, or did you think about this? Yeah, I totally thought about this, and this was my answer. And once you say that answer out loud, you're like, thanks, I'm gonna go now.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. It's happened.
I have a question for people who are watching live. So what's one obligation that you have in your life that you've taken on as an opportunity where other people around you have taken it on like it's something they have to and they're forced to do or whatever. So what's one obligation that you have or one commitment you've made in your life where you're like, I'm going to totally empower this. I'm going to make it work. It's going to be mine. I'm going to own it, that whatever it is. And that the people around you are like, I can't believe we have to do this.
Yeah.
I'm curious what folks say. I'd love to hear what other people's experience are.
Yeah, live or replay. If you guys don't get it on the
Yeah.
live, then definitely give us on the replay. I'd love to hear that too. That'd be definitely interesting because I mean there's so many things there. You go through, do you have like a rough number of how many decisions that we have to make in a day? That sounds like a stat you might have.
No, I do not have that stat. It is 1,483 exactly for every
As
person.
I suspected. So we make a ton of decisions all day long, and some of them we just do them out of habit. And I also I'm a fan of what's that 5-second rule, right? What are some of the habits that hold on a second. We got some responses here. Brock says being a stay-at-home dad. Tony Lee says, Brock, so are you empowering yourself to make that decision, or is that a grr face? Right? Is that what we're asking? And then
Go ahead.
And then Tony Lee's got working at my office job. People don't understand why I love my office job so much. The reality is that if I'm going to be here, I'm going to choose to bring the best of myself to it. And you know what? People love me for it.
Yeah. And I love that Tony Lee said that. Tony Lee, that's perfect because that's the gold. That's the absolute gold that having that perspective gives you, because you empower your choice to be at work. You show up like a bright, shiny penny in the room because you're having fun. Everybody around you goes, who's that Tony Lee? How is she so happy at work? We want to spend time with her. Let's pour love on her because we want her love back. So she's actually getting empowered by the people around her to continue making this choice, even though they're continuing to make the same choice they've always made. And it has this thing, and it like you become the magnet in the room, right? They're like, if like imagine going to a cocktail party that you don't know anybody at, like you don't know anybody. For a lot of people, that's super intimidating. Like you walk in the room and there's nobody you know, and you ask people, well, what do you do in a cocktail party like that? They go, oh, straight for the bar, straight for the food.
For sure.
Right. And I stand there and maybe make eye contact with one person and maybe we'll make small talk, right? And I'll stand by the food the entire time. But if for the moment you try on the possibility that I'm choosing to be here and I'm welcome in any way that I show up, and just walk into there, not only does it shift the way you carry yourself and like the way that you look up, you're more likely to make eye contact, you're more likely to engage in conversation. But if you become that person who's choosing to be there and be part of a social scene and have conversations with people, people are like, who's that person over there having that conversation? They seem very animated and having a great time. Maybe I want to go be part of that conversation. This is adult conversation over here.
Sure.
Right. So it becomes this like, you actually create your own traction.
Right. For sure. Brock Scott, I am happy to be a stay-at-home dad, and I use my story to show how empowering fathers can be in their kids' lives. Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it, Brock. Tony Lee. Thanks. That's true. But I try to do this in most places. Another example of grocery shopping. I used to have very poor attitude about it, but I shifted to choosing and bringing the best of myself. And now grocery shopping actually turns into an entertaining experience. It always is. Brock, I have more confidence in my role as a stay-at-home dad than I've ever been in my typical marketplace job. Absolutely. I think that you know what, and guys, that is actually my platform personally. If you can, and this would probably be yours as well, Charlie, you know, if you have nailed down kind of like your home life, it gives you a lot more confidence with that first step out the door, right? You get yourself together at home. You feel like you've got your dad shit together, right? You got your husband shit together. You're kind of like infallible, right? It's like, all right, well, everybody's happy. And, you know, as far as I can tell, we've done all the things that need to be done and addressed here to, you know, focus on family first. And I feel powerful. Let's go take this to the rest of the world. I mean, that's a great springboard. So for me, that is, and it's you know, it's a tough sell to say, hey, listen, let's just get you to have a better home life. People are like, yeah, but I need more money. Yeah, but I need a better job. Yeah, but well, you know what? What if you just needed to have a better home life? What if you could start with everything that you've already got right now in this time and place, and be a happier, well-adjusted, you know, person with a family that, you know, loves you back as much as you say you love them. You know, that's my shtick. And I know it's tough though, but like, honestly, if all that is possible with just making the adjustments at home, I think that's huge.
Well, I think that for me, the you know, it's, are you being who you say you want to be in the world? Are you being the man you want to be? Right. Like, nobody gets to tell you how to be a man, right? Like that's a personal definition, and it's different for every man. But are you showing up the way that serves you and your family best as far as you can determine, right? Like,
for sure.
And are you, you know, like, can you walk out of there and go, you know what? I absolutely am doing the best I know how, given what I know right now, given the resources I have, given the circumstances that are around us, because there's so many things we can't control. And the one thing that we can control is what we say and what we do. And how we speak dramatically impacts the way our kids grow up, right? You know, our narrative, especially for dads with daughters, the words we use to speak with our daughters are the words that they end up hearing inside their head as an adult. So if we use words of affirmation and and empowerment, and like, I'm not like, you know, your daddy's favorite is not one of those things, right? But, you know, it's like, you can do this. I totally believe you. You got this, like that. The words that we use help define the way our kids see themselves and the way they see the family. And it gives them confidence to go out in the world. And then they come home knowing that the family is strong, right? Or it's solid, right? Like, they know what to expect when we're consistent, and that we're, you know, and that we show up, and that we continue to be the person that we need to be, which is really which for me really speaks to the incredible clarity about, like, who is it that you want to be as a parent? Who is it you want to be as a dad?
Right.
What does that look like? What does that not only look like, when we talk about values, we always like, well, it's God, family, and country. And I call BS. I think that's because you have no idea, and that sounds nice, and it might make parishioners at your church feel good to hear you.
That's your canned response, right? And so
right.
we want to you want to get right past that.
Yeah, I want to know exactly.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think that's so. We also get to a point where is the person willing for that conversation? I love the line that people don't resist change, they resist being changed. Right. So if maybe they're just not willing to have that conversation right now, maybe they're just like, listen, now's not the time. Right. Even though now is always the time. We all know that now's the time. If it's ever going to be ever, it's going to be now.
Right.
But pushing that conversation is something that I don't necessarily I don't try and push it too hard myself. So somebody wants to give me a canned response and I might fish a little bit more. I'll be like, oh yeah, what do you mean by that? Or, what's behind that? And like, and just move on. And because what do you find for the person not willing to have that conversation? What's your approach?
So can you ask that question one more time?
So they give the canned response. I'm curious kind of how you respond to the canned response. You said BS. You're like, I call BS. And then what?
I don't have a canned response for it. It's like, it doesn't share with me anything. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I think people say that, like, what's important to you? Right. Like, that's like asking what's important to you. I'd probably just follow it up and be like, okay, can you like share something with me that helps me understand a little bit more about you and what, like what your world looks like on the inside, what your worldview is. You're a nuanced human being. You have layers upon layers upon layers. And I'm really interested in actually connecting with you. And it was kind of asked, like, what would you share with me that would help me get who you are on the planet?
Right. Right. Help determine.
I'm not interested in like they're not intentionally pushing me off unless they are. And then you find out pretty quickly, and that's fine.
Right. There you go. Tony Lee says, clarification. I try to peel back the can and it always backfires in my face. Clarification. It backfires without agreement. And I understand. So yeah, that I think is the key there. Like, once you try to, peel back the layer or something like that, without somebody giving you that permission. I think we talked about that at the beginning, right? Like having that permission to have that frank conversation or to dig a little deeper. Be like, hey, do you mind if we just dig a little deeper on that? People are sensitive, man. I mean, it's true. And I think guys are a lot more sensitive than we let on. And it's like, who are you to question that I just said I'm having a great day? I'm having a great day. Right. Yeah. If I tell you I'm having a great day, I'm having a great day. Yeah. That type of thing.
Well, so, that's like most conversations are just shop talk. And sometimes that's fine, right? Yeah. Like, standing in line waiting for Starbucks. How you doing? Great, thanks.
I mean, so I think that's an interesting thing too. Like, what do you do when you kind of you want to have all these deep conversations and you want to go deep and you want to figure out the world, right? With everybody, your friends, peers, whatever. But at a certain point, you're like, let's just talk about syrup. I don't know. I just first thing that came to my mind, right? It's like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, except worse. But it's like, you try to keep your mind clear. You just want to have like a real light conversation, and everybody's still going deep. You're like, what do you do to stay light, Charlie? Because remember we talked about having this as a light conversation as well.
Right. Right. No, it's like, I'll tell you a story. So 5 or 6 years ago, I'm back east, rented a house with my family, and we're sharing this small turn of the century house with no air conditioning in New England in the summer.
Nice.
Yes.
Sounds awesome.
Humidity and heat. It was awesome. Small bedrooms, family. It was awesome.
She was terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had young kids at the time, and it's probably more like 8 years ago. And so there we are. And it's been a long day, and we've had a day at the beach, and then we've done a barbecue, and we've done some fun stuff. And we've been doing a lot of running around. But you know what days are like as a parent, you know what days are like that, where you're like, oh my, look, like, can we get a break? You know,
Right.
and dinner ends up, and there's doing dishes, and the kids are running around, and they want to read books, and they want to do this, and they're fighting, and whatever the thing is. And finally, my wife and I are like, oh, we got the kids to go down. So we take them upstairs and we get them down. It's hot. Turn the fan on, open the windows, pour ice on them, whatever you need. And then finally, the kids go to sleep. And we go downstairs, and this house has a room that they've made a TV room. It's just this little room with a TV and some windows. It's still hot. And we're like, you know what? Let's just watch some TV. It's just not a big deal. My brother's already in there. He has no kids. He's been watching TV for a while. He's good.
Right.
And we walk in, and there's this rerun of Law and Order. And so my wife and I just sit on the couch, and we're like, you're just like unwinding, and you're just I want to turn my brain off.
Right.
And my mother comes in, and downtime was not really on her radar in the world. And she comes in, and she's watching Law and Order with us. And the Law and Order, like, dun, 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 and this is going to happen. And then he killed her in this egregious way. And then he dumped her in a dumpster, and bad things happened. And we're finally putting the pieces together. And what does the prosecutor come in and say? Come on, Brendan, help me out. He always says this, for this crime, we're going for I don't know. The death penalty, right?
Yeah, okay.
In the state of New York, we're going for the death penalty, which is right. And, boom, boom. And then they cut to commercial.
Sure.
My mother, sitting looking at the TV, then looks over at my wife and I and says, so what do you guys think of the death penalty?
Right. You're like, what? I don't even know.
And I just looked at my mom and I said, Mom, keeping it light, just watching TV right now.
Right. Right.
Light,
yeah.
Just watching TV. Yeah.
Amen.
That's what I got right now.
For sure.
It's about the bandwidth I got.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And it's a great thing to be aware of. I'm so glad you said it, right? Like, because, if anybody's guilty of jumping in waist deep into heavy conversations, it's me. Because like I said, I have a hard time with small talk sometimes. But knowing yourself and knowing when you're at your limit, like, this has been great, but you know what? I just can't have a conversation at this level today.
Right.
Today, I just want to talk about rainbows and cupcakes.
Right.
Can we just do rainbows and cupcakes?
And guess what? I don't care if there's sugar in there. I don't care if there's artificial color. I don't give a shit. We're going to eat it, and we're going to have fun with it. It's just like, so taking a day off. Well, I mean, I not even necessarily taking a day off, right? But there's got to be moments of levity, of lightness, of, everything's actually going to be great. Let's just feel good about, let's feel good about feeling good about feeling good.
Yeah. If
that's going to be okay with everybody.
Yeah. And, and really being present that everything is all right. Like everything right now is all right. Like, we had this, this last year, we had a couple of lockdowns at our high school.
Okay. Yeah. You were saying.
One of them, and my son was not at the high school. He was at a separate school.
Right.
And I went to pick him up from school during the lockdown. There was a lot of police presence. There was a lot of police activity in the community because of an external threat, or considered an external threat. And I walked into my son's classroom, and his teacher and several other teachers were in there. And the teachers were talking about how should they manage dismissal from school. Even though the lockdown wasn't in their school, it was still in the community, and there was police activity, right? They were like, and what I listened for and what I saw was fear and apprehension in the three teachers, because they didn't really know what to do. And there was this apprehension. And then I looked at all the kids in my son's class, and they were looking to the teachers for guidance. And what they were getting was fear and apprehension. Yeah. So we worked it out. It all worked fine. We were able to, hold on to the kids. We kept them inside. We shared with the families. We were able to, everything worked out just fine. I took my son outdoors, and I said, yeah, it seemed like people were pretty anxious in there. He's like, yeah. I said, I want you to take a look around. I said, I want you to walk, spin a 360, look around. I said, okay, now I want you to listen. Okay, cool. So when you did your 360, did you see anything out of the ordinary? And he said, no. I said, cool. You didn't see anybody running? He's like, no. You didn't see any cars driving erratically? No. you see any police officers? No. Did you see any siren or hear any sirens or anybody screaming or yelling or any sounds that you didn't recognize? He's like, no. I said, okay, cool. So right now, everything's okay. Right where you and I are, everything's okay. Now,
Right.
maybe there's something going on at the high school. Maybe not. We haven't heard yet. Your sister's there. She's texted me. She's fine. But right now, we're fine. And so we get to take a deep breath, because when we can control ourselves, when we can manage ourselves, especially in times of crisis,
Right.
that's when we can be assets to others.
Right.
When we can be that calming presence. And when we can start bringing that kind of awareness to younger, to girls and boys, we can bring that kind of a self-awareness. Like, what do you like? There's a lot in social media that's getting people wound up, or there's some news, or there's some gossip, or there's something going on over here. But when we can invite them to go, what do you notice is going on for you right now? Well, I feel nervous because I'm hearing all this stuff about what's going on with high school. Cool. But are we safe? Are we okay right now where we are?
Right.
Yeah. Right. We used our eyes and our ears. We used our senses. We're safe. Okay, cool. Is there anything to do right now? No. Okay, cool. So how about we hang out and wait for news, and then we'll go get your sister from high school, which is what happened.
Right.
But like being and that's an extreme example, but getting present to that, 99.9% of the time, there's nothing wrong.
Right.
Like, we're having thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and we have a lot of, don't tell other men this, but we're having lots of emotions all the time.
Sure. Yeah. Right. I mean, they're there.
And we don't acknowledge them, and we pretend they're, often we pretend they're not there, or we try and operate over the top of them and push them down.
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said for the suppression of emotions versus the acknowledgement of them, right? So if we can acknowledge them and then make a decision whether or not that those emotions in that moment in time are valid, or if they're serving us, be like, hey, I'm feeling this anxiety or being overwhelmed. How's that serving me? And if it's not serving me, move on. Be like, I feel it. Yep, there it is. I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna feel something else right now.
Right. I loved what Tony Lee said in her comments. She spoke to the fact that sometimes she feels really profound emotions and just lets them be. And that's the other thing. It's like that's something that's really beautiful as well. And that takes practice. It certainly takes practice for me. It's a practice for me ongoing. But I got really inspired by a study that the Department of Defense did a long time ago, like 30 years ago or something. Okay. They interviewed all the Congressional Medal of Honor winners and the Congressional Medal of Valor winners. All the medal winners that received medals for bravery, and they wanted to do a retrospective series of interviews to find out what all these soldiers had in common, like what made them so brave, what had them choose to do things that are so outside the norm, so outside their self-interest. And is that something that we can train, or what do they have in common? They got super curious about this. So they sent out this bevy of interviewers, and they interviewed everybody who was still alive who had ever won these medals. Huh. And here's what they discovered is that these people came from all walks of life, every color under the rainbow, every gender under the rainbow, although there aren't many genders that we're aware of. There are a few, but every socioeconomic background, like urban, rural, farm country, inner city kid, across the board, education, some had zero education, some had their masters, none of it. The one thing that they all had in common was when they interviewed them specifically about that time that they rushed the machine gun nest, or they pulled their buddy out of the line of fire, or they ran out in front of that tank, or whatever that thing was. When they asked them about it, they're like, you got a medal for bravery. Like, where did you get that bravery from?
Right.
And the thing they found in common was all of the medal winners said, what bravery? I was so scared.
Right.
But it was what there was to do. So I just did what there was to do. So it wasn't the lack of fear. It wasn't the lack of apprehension. It was their willingness to allow it, really what Tony was speaking to allow it and continue to do what there was to do to get the thing done.
Right. Lean into it, man. Lean into it. Lean into it. Let's close it up, brother.
Let's do it.
Let's close it up. Charlie, awesome, brother. I pinned your comment for those that show up late or skip to the end, because the end is where all the good stuff is. I don't know. Some people use a slider, right? Like, I'm just got to get to the end. What happens?
Here, wait, hold on.
Charlie's launching a new fatherhood program that you guys should go check out. Avoid fitness fad pitfalls. So that's Heroic Fatherhood. I've pinned the comment. Go check it out. All kinds of great stuff there, but also reach out to Charlie and have a conversation with him. I promise you, it won't be something short and just in passing.
Better buckle up, Buttercup. Better buckle up, Buttercup. Get yourself a 20-ounce coffee, because we're coming at you now.
There's gonna be tears.
Gonna be tears.
Charlie's always a great resource just to have those conversations with. If you're not having them inside of either Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, if you're not having them, Charlie, I believe you've got a group as well. Heroic Fatherhood is your group. Is that your group? Facebook?
It's actually, we're working on a page, Heroic Fatherhood, these days. We do not have an open group. We're going to be part of the Dad's Edge program. The 6-week program is we're creating a group that's going to be evergreen for attendees. Okay. So there'll be opportunity for, I want you to think about, this program is ground school. Right. It's like ground school for men. Right. And it's like when we have this foundation level understanding together, right, we can have these incredible conversations together. So this is really ground school for a community we're going to build on the backside of it.
Okay. Awesome. So if you don't have sign, Tony says, thanks guys. I appreciate this incredible, thoughtful conversation. Thanks for letting me participate. Tony Lee, you are always welcome. Thanks for joining and hanging out. And so if you guys aren't having a conversation with, in a group, or you feel comfortable in a group of men, reach out to Charlie or myself, get plugged in. There's a ton of different groups out there. There is no one size fits all, which is of course why I have Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, if it fits everybody else. Reach out, find a place where you can be supported by other men. I know it sounds weird, but it happens. There are other guys out there who want you to be successful, who want you to have a super happy, flourishing life. And I know Fatherhood for the Rest of Us is a free group. You can join and just see what that's like to be around guys that are like that. And again, if you're not comfortable in Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, I know of tons of other groups. Have a conversation with somebody who is plugged in and find out more. All right, that's gonna do it. I'm gonna turn this off. Hey, yeah. So and guys, we're gonna do this once a month. Charlie and I are gonna get together. Look out for us on. I think Charlie, you're gonna be hosting next time, right? You're gonna be hosting.
Yeah, I will host over on Heroic Fatherhood. So go on over to Heroic Fatherhood page. We will host over there. It will be awesome. We don't have a date. We will let you know.
Yes.
And it will be fantabulous.
Yeah, it's because these are pop-up fatherhood conversations. I like it.
Right. I like it.